It's Tuesday, April 6. This is the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom Gayle. The lockdowns over the long Easter weekend driven by the COVID-19 pandemic saw the Jamaica Constabulary Force, JCF, and supplemental forces being called upon to ensure residents did not violate stay-at-home restrictions. The police were highly visible. They set up checkpoints and conducted what appeared to be stop and search of traversing the streets without proper authorization. Those found to be in violation were ticketed for breaking lockdown restrictions. Dedicated units wended their way slowly through the streets, supporting patrolling teams as well as maintaining public order. The lockdowns, designed to save lives and stop the spread of the virus, has claimed the lives of 622 people in Jamaica. More than 1,000 senior citizens received the first dose of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine on the weekend at the National Arena. Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says the day's target of 1,000 was exceeded, albeit only after the age range was expanded. He says the day started with staff members inoculating persons 75 years and older, but the age range was expanded after midday to include persons at the age of 60 and over. Members of Parliament in Kingston and St. Andrew assisted the process by mobilizing their constituents. Dr. Tufton says the ministry will also be working with the Ministry of Local Government to reach targeted groups for the next mass vaccination exercise. The island's hospitals are still under pressure, with most COVID-19 wards still at full capacity. But Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says as more Jamaicans get vaccinated, he expects the number of hospitalizations to drop. He addressed the situation at a recent COVID-19 conversation press briefing. The Health and Wellness Minister, Dr. Christopher Tufton, says his ministry has been able to procure more COVID-19 vaccines, despite there being a shortage of supply, in some instances due to vaccine hoarding.
With the efforts of the NHF, Mr. Mitchell and his team, Everton Anderson, and the rest of us, we have been able to secure some vaccines starting as early as this weekend, and this is really good news, very, very good news for us.
Dr. Tufton says 75,000 doses of AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines were procured through the African Medical Support Platform, and they're en route to Jamaica.
And then we have another 20,000 doses of the Moderna, which we have sourced through some other commercial arrangements. I don't have the specific details on that, but very welcome. This Moderna, this will be the first Moderna branded that we would have gotten. And then we anticipate, based on information we've received from the COVAX facility, the WHO supported COVAX facility, a 26,000 dose of AstraZeneca, which hopefully will come to us sometime in the early April.
He says these should ensure the government's ability to continue to administer vaccines over the next 6 weeks. He says vaccination is an important part of the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
We are hoping that we will see or realize these doses, this amount, in over the next, which will allow us to continue the program over the next, I would say, 4 to 6 weeks. And during that time, of course, we are aggressively pursuing other sources, and we have expectations to be supplied through the contracts or the agreements that we already have, in particular COVAX and also the African Medical Support Platform.
Minister Tufton says he expects the market for vaccines to free up a bit in a few months as countries slow down on stockpiling their supply. The number of COVID-19 cases has surpassed the 41,000 mark. Here's a look at the latest Ministry of Health and Wellness's clinical summary. Melvin Pennant has the details.
In the clinical summary for Monday, April 5, 2021, 350 new positives were recorded as well as 4 deaths. The island's overall case count is 41,328, of which 21,971 are active cases. 4 persons' deaths were also reported, moving the death toll to 622. The parish breakdown is as follows. Kingston and St. Andrew recorded 66 positives, St. Catherine has 48, St. Anne 38, and Westmoreland has 32. Trelawney recorded 22 cases and St. Elizabeth 20, while Clarendon and St. James both had 18. Manchester reported 17, St. Mary and Hanover recorded 12, St. Thomas 11, and Portland 1. In the meantime, some 147 persons have recovered from the virus, pushing that total to 18,444. At this time, 388 persons are hospitalized, 31 are showing moderate symptoms, and 33 are critical. Melvin Pennant, PBCJ News.
The Education Ministry is working to facilitate students with special needs who will be sitting the May 26 ability test component of the primary exit profile exam. Acting Chief Education Officer Dr. Kassan Troop says the assistance provided includes sign language interpreters, linguistic aids, scribes, and the translation of examination scripts to Braille. She told participants of a recent virtual parenting conference that requisite staff are often engaged to ensure that students are fairly tested in the exam and they get an equal opportunity to earn their place in high school. Jamaican students are placed in high school through the results of the ability test scores combined with the results of the Grade 4 performance task exams in language arts and mathematics that the students would have taken in 2019. The University of the West Indies, UWI, has secured an international grant to the tune of $25 million. This is the largest grant in the institution's 73-year history. According to a release on Monday, the university said the grant comes via United States Silicon Valley digital technology giant Eon Reality. They recently announced their partnership with UWI, one that will assure significant investment in Caribbean digital education and professional training. The project is being spearheaded by Dr. Louise Longsworth, principal of UWI Open Campus and Pro-Vice Chancellor of Global Affairs. In the meantime, Vice Chancellor Sir Hilary Beckles welcomed the development, describing it as a major and very timely step for the university. The sexual harassment bill is almost here. Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport Minister Olivia Grange says Jamaicans will soon have an operational legislation that will not only seek to prevent sexual harassment, but will also provide the necessary protection to victims. Minister Grange made the comment during a recent meeting of the Joint Select Committee reviewing the Sexual Harassment Act 2020. Members of the Joint Select Committee reviewing the proposed Sexual Harassment Act 2020 looked at contributions from various organizations in the last meeting. One such institution was the Norman Manley Law School.
They proposed that the bill, since it's aimed at creating a safe environment for all workers, it should extend the context of sexual harassment occurring in other directions. And we had expressed this before, but they expressed it again in the general recommendation section. So not only supervisor to manager or colleague to colleague, but also from worker to supervisor. So, and we had considered that. I don't recall if we had decided on it, but it certainly was discussed. They propose as well that references to the court throughout the bill be extended to the Supreme Court, and that we contemplate a ceiling on the amount of compensation to be awarded by the tribunal.
Head of the Bureau of Gender Affairs, Mrs. Sharon Coben Robinson, said based on the definition in the Act, a person who is in charge could still be defined as a worker.
Based on the definition in the legislation, that person who is in charge or is a superior can in fact be harassed by a subordinate. So I think it would be that the decision would be taken based on, whether or not it can be taken, looking at other legislations and how they have treated it. But I think the technical team had started looking at it, and we had said, based on the fact that that person is still a worker, consideration could be made.
So what is your guidance?
My guidance is that it is possible for somebody who is in authority or in charge to be harassed by a subordinate. It can happen.
Senator Natalie Campbell-Rodriguez suggested that the bill specify the tier of worker when stipulating boundaries.
And I was pointing out that the social construct in certain communities in Jamaica would not necessarily facilitate that. Because you're a supervisor or a manager, for example, let us say you work in a wholesale in Spanish Town. Let us just use Spanish Town as a random place because I picked on Kingston the last time. And you fear that in your community, you're going to be seen as a you cause you bunks bread out of Jennifer hand. And as such, as a manager or a supervisor, you may not be willing to fire the person, which is why I thought the clause should speak to it and not just use the term employer, but also supervisor or manager, because it's not always the employer. It's just someone who is above you in the food chain. But I do think and still support the idea that, there needs to be something in clause 4, the same way it is it 4-7, sorry. It is laid out as just mentioned a while ago. I think we need to put something in there, just a line to say a worker shall not sexually harass a supervisor, manager, or employer, whatever the phrasing is.
The Ministry of Justice's Patrona Sealy-Brown suggested that the term co-worker could be used as a blanket term instead. Senator Kevin Brown disagreed.
That standalone clause, I believe Mrs. Sealy-Brown hinted at it, where it was suggested that just as one clause that said the employee must not harass, whether it is a supervisor or manager or the employer. The other thing is that, Chair, the clause that speaks to a co-worker shall not harass a co-worker may not address it. And let me explain why. That employer might be saying in their mind that I'm not your co-worker. I am, in fact, your manager. And there ought to be that distinction that separates it. And so it is my view that we should have a single clause that represents it, that would make that distinction. The other thing, and Mrs. Sealy-Brown again made reference to it, it might change the way awards are made. So you may now have an award that the tribunal have to determine against the background, what do we do with this employee who sexually harassed the supervisor or manager? It may very well lead to disciplinary actions being taken against the employee. And so the tribunal now would find itself in a position where it would have to make a particular judgment in that regard.
The Rastafari Coral Gardens Elders Home, established at Granville in St. James, is now operational. Managed by the Rastafari Coral Gardens Benevolent Society, the home will provide for the medical and social needs of the survivors of the 1963 Coral Gardens Massacre. It is funded by the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport. In 2017, Prime Minister Andrew Holness announced the setting up of a trust fund to be administered by the Administrator General as compensation to survivors of the 1963 Coral Gardens Massacre. Minister Grange says the fund has exceeded the initial sum of $13 million placed in it in 2018. Survivors have been receiving regular disbursements since then. Global oil prices rose on Tuesday. Find out why, as well as get other key market details in this quick business report with Gabriel Thompson.
In Thursday's trading session, the JSE Combined Index advanced by 2,623 points to close at under 400,000 units. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 77 stocks, of which 39 advanced, 22 declined, and 16 traded firm. The Junior Market Index advanced by 13 points to close at under 3,000 units. Stocks advanced for 1834 Investments Limited, Barita Investments Limited, and Caribbean Cement Company Limited. Stocks declined for Blue Power Group Limited, Caribbean Assurance Brokers, and Epli Caribbean Property Fund Limited. Trading firm were CAC 2000 9.5% preference shares, Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances Limited, and Community and Workers of Jamaica CCU deferred share. Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited was the volume leader with 4.6 million units, followed by Mailpack Group Limited with 3.3 million units, and Wigton Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares with over 2.7 million units. In foreign exchange trading for Thursday, April 1, the US dollar ended trading at $146.86. The Canadian dollar sold for an average $117.76. The pound sterling traded for $202.41, and the euro ended trading at $175.05. Oil prices rose on Tuesday, supported by strong economic data from China and the United States, recouping some of the losses from the previous session due to rising OPEC Plus supply and infections in India and parts of Europe. Brent crude oil futures rose 90 cents to $63.05 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate crude futures added 98 cents to $59.63 a barrel. Both contracts fell around $3 on Monday. And on that note, we end this Tuesday edition of the Business Report Inside the News on PBCJ. I'm Gabrielle Thompson. Pleasant viewing.
We go now to some of the stories making headlines across our region. In St. Lucia, the Ministry of Health is calling on the public to make responsible decisions during and after the Easter weekend. Health authorities warned citizens to avoid excessive alcohol consumption, driving under the influence, and conflict. More in this report.
St. Lucians are urged to do all they can to enjoy the Easter holidays safely, particularly by the beach. Given historical trends, the Easter holiday is known for unfortunate drowning incidents. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Sharon Belmont-George is appealing to the public to keep a close eye on minors at the beach.
The Ministry of Health and Wellness advises St. Lucians to make responsible decisions to keep safe during and after the Easter weekend. Traditionally, it's a time for family activities and socialization. This year may be different for many with the protocols that have been put in place for the management of COVID-19. Despite the difficulties in the past year, let us remain focused on what is truly important: health, family, and life. We acknowledge and applaud the public for their cooperation during the last few difficult months of managing this third and intense wave of COVID-19 in country. We ask the public to celebrate the long weekend responsibly, avoid excessive alcohol consumption, avoid driving under the influence, drive within the speed limits, and manage conflict safely, especially since we note the increases in violent crime over the last few days. If accessing the beach, do so with caution and monitor young children closely. The Easter weekend is noted for drownings and near-drowning events.
Dr. Belmont-George also reminds the public to keep socialization at a minimum to slow the spread of COVID-19. She adds that the authorities are working on reducing the number of cases to 50 to resume social activities.
In relation to COVID-19, the public is reminded that although the Ministry of Health notes the flattening of this third wave, we still have over 100 active cases in country. We would like to alert the public that mass crowd activities and open socialization is not recommended nor approved at this time in our management of the pandemic. We are still at high risk at this point. The public health team is working to reduce the cases to less than 50 to enable safe opening up of activities. We ask the public to work with us and continue to be patient. The premature social activity will lead to an upsurge of cases given the exponential transmission typical of this virus.
Medical officials encourage the public to follow COVID-19 protocols to decrease the odds of infection during the Easter break.
We need to continue adhering to the infection prevention and control measures that are proven to reduce transmission of the COVID-19 virus and keep us safe. These include the following: wash your hands often with soap and flowing water or use alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Wear your mask, which covers your nose, mouth, and chin. Maintain physical distance from others and avoid crowded activities. Let us work together to ensure healthy lifestyles for Easter and beyond.
The authorities have revised the curfew hours for the Easter holidays in an attempt to curb the spread of COVID-19. While intimate gatherings of 10 are permitted, mass crowd activities are strictly prohibited. Gina Filippi, HCS News Force.
In Guyana, the Ministry of Housing and Water on Thursday inked $2.3 billion worth of contracts with 6 contractors for the construction of a 4-lane highway from Eccles on the east bank of Demerara to Mandela Avenue in Georgetown. A continuation of works already started in the area. More from News Source Guyana.
The works have been divided into 6 lots and are expected to begin in 2 weeks, with a completion date set for the 10th of December this year. The companies that will be responsible for the roadworks include Guy America Construction, Inc., JS Guyana Incorporated, Orinoco Services, and Aaron Loud Civil Engineering Works, along with Colin Talbot Contracting Services. The scope of works includes land clearing and drain cleaning, construction of a 5.5 kilometer of earthen drains and 200 meters of reinforced concrete drains, construction of reinforced concrete box culverts, 2.8 kilometers of 4-lane rigid pavement carriageway with 2 parking lanes, installation of solar streetlights, and 12 reinforced heavy-duty composite bridges. According to the Housing Minister Colin Crowell, the project is expected to benefit more than 18,000 households in schemes under the Ministry and the Central Housing and Planning Authority.
We are speaking about 18,800 beneficiaries directly, or households that are within the remit of our housing scheme along that stretch of the East Bank. So I'm not giving you the general population news, I'm giving you directly how many households we are speaking about along the East Bank corridor that falls under our.
Meanwhile, the minister within the Ministry of Housing and Water, Suzanne Rodriguez, said she is pleased to see the rolling out of the project, which she said will not only enhance the country's transportation landscape, but also provide employment opportunities.
It will have a significant impact on the lives of Guyanese. It will not just change the physical infrastructure of our country, but it will transform lives. And since we have taken office, and even prior to that, our government has been relentless in ensuring that that agenda is pushed and that development comes to the lives of every single Guyanese, and that our country, the landscape, and the lives of Guyanese are transformed over the next 5 years. And you are our partners in ensuring that we achieve that objective. Government alone cannot take on such a task. We are policymakers.
Referencing a record-breaking $13.9 billion in contracts recently signed by the Housing Ministry, the Minister of Housing said that this is further evidence of his government's commitment to transforming the country.
In Trinidad and Tobago, local artisans were given a much-needed opportunity during a long ongoing pandemic to showcase and sell their products at the Hyatt Regency Trinidad over the long Easter weekend. The artisans faced several challenges as a result of the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. Terry and Brown Campbell reports.
Books, candles, clothing, accessories, all locally made, were on display and on sale at the Hyatt Regency Trinidad Hotel during the long Easter weekend. The usually quiet hallways of the hotel teemed with browsers, buyers and sellers, enjoying the sights and smells of the market.
We have our Sunday market pop-up shop for this Easter. We are featuring a lot of our local artists, artisans, craftsmen from both internally in the hotel, so our very own employees, as well as artisans from the general public.
One of the local artisans displaying books, art and music was journalist Rahul Pantin's daughter, Mandisa Pantin.
So it's not only you selling something, you get to encounter somebody else selling something that is locally made, and it's very important for us as a people to, I don't want to say barter, but share and exchange ideas and what we sell as a people.
Another familiar face was retired Assistant Commissioner of Police Margaret Sampson Brown. Her booth, Samu's, offered some unique pieces.
We are here as a collective, really sharing the spirit of inventiveness to the general public today, this wonderful Easter Sunday.
Mrs. Sampson Brown explained that the clothing and accessories were made by members of her family and other artisans from all over the country. At a nearby stall, Bella Sukdeo, a fitness instructor, showed off her recently launched clothing line.
We've had to get very creative in how we do things, from online classes to launching online platforms. It was something that made us become very innovative, but still.
Ms. Sukdeo noted that while things were still challenging because of the pandemic, she hoped her upbeat clothing with positive logos would help lift people's spirits. Terry Ann Brown Campbell, TTT News.
In sports, we go to track and field. Former St. Mary High athlete Abigail Schaaf won 3 gold medals at the Big Ten Florida Invitational in Jacksonville over the weekend. She won the 400 meters hurdles in 54.7 seconds and would go on to also sweep the 400 meters and was part of the Golding winning quartet in the 4x400 meters relay. And that's all we have for you today on the news at PBCJ. Join us tomorrow, same time, same place, right here on PBCJ, the People's Station.